Hello fans of Marvel Heroes and friends of my channel, my name is Wilfred and today I would like to share a little bit with you on the theory crafting aspect of this game. Now I have not been doing that on my video for quite some time. Reason being, after the biggest update ever, the game has changed a lot. Most of the time, if you are experienced, you could sort of like figure out a few builds that the game already designed it to be, looking at the talent and power combination. And because all my heroes are kind of like similarly geared, when I test my build, if it's roughly the same kind of like a kill time and so on, I just get on with it. That's number one reason. Number two reason is that back then, after the biggest update ever, the game has changed a lot. Every patch after patches, they changed the hero power, quality of life, kind of like update and so on. So it takes time to go through the numbers. And I found that a lot of time I was wasting my effort to do that. Now that the game is not really patched up for the PC version, so it could be bad, could be good. The bad thing, of course, we all wanted something fresh to go on, get on with the game. Some update would be good. But the good thing about it is that with stability comes, you can investigate on certain things. Now, if you follow my videos on Nick Fury, I must say that I'm not really entirely happy with quite a lot of things on Nick Fury. And I'll do a little bit more video on that from that aspect. And that prompted me to actually go through the numbers again to see what has gone wrong with the whole design. Where could I squeeze out the very last ounce of the DPS or gameplay from him? So the process I would like to share with you is usually like this. I would take out all the gears, I would take out all the infinity point, everything else that affect the character, just to study all the numbers behind the scene. So that's step number one. Step number two is that with that comes sort of like an idea of what to build and how to build and so on. Step number two is put on all the gear that is more or less kind of like, starting of the end game journey, and observe, are there any area that has changed drastically? And for Nick Fury, there are actually some area. So that's number two. Number three step is that I try to assemble a build to test it out and see whether in reality, beyond the spreadsheet, does it work? Is it fun? Is it effective? And that is where the fine tuning comes. Now with the number, the advantage is that whatever decision I make in fine tuning my build to be more fun and so on, I know what are the trade-off. I know I'm sacrificing maybe 10% on this power or that power. Overall maybe just drop to like another 2 or 3%. I can deal with 2 or 3% DPS loss if make it more fun kind of thing. So it becomes very much like an informed decision. Now over time, a lot of you actually chatted to me through Steam and through the game as well, asking me how I do certain numbers. So this video is really for that, from that aspect. You do not require to watch the entire video to understand how I derive the build, because I will make another guide on Nick Fury for some of you who are not interested in the mathematics background of it. So that is the whole reason why I'm doing the whole thing. By the way, just now it was my mother-in-law just asking about something else. Okay, now so now let's go back to the whole thing about the spreadsheet number and stuff like that. So now with maybe for some of you who are not understanding the entire Nick Fury kind of gameplay, I'm going to give a little bit intro so that you can get an appreciation on how his power is like and why I derive the number. Now Nick Fury has 3 kind of main power as a left button here. Now you could do like a basic power. You could do things like the like the traditional kind of like attack speed kind of power, or you can do a channel power with range area channeled. So what I've done is that first of all I studied these 3 power to see which one is better in what way, and so on and so forth. Now the complexity comes when, if you look at triple tap, is that it actually Nick Fury has a reloading kind of option here. Let me just get to the training room to show you the reloading bit kind of thing. So now how it works is that there's an ammo. If I'm using a power that would use up ammo, which is only 2 power so far, I will come upon a time whereby I could reload. Now reload comes 2 ways. Reload comes this way, that I could use a fresh clip to reload, right? Oops, I mean come back. All right, so I could reload. Now when I reload, all my ammo is coming back again. So that's one way. Another way is that, of course, I could do a seesaw kind of action. So I could, like, for example, I could use the this power to drain it all the way to the end, and then let it trigger the you know, kind of like reload. And during this kind of time, you could actually, you know, be more awesome. Now, of course, you know, gameplay aside, it's very clunky. Unlike last time, you could do like kind of you know, hot bar dancing. Now you can't. So you probably need to, you know, let me just show it to you. You probably need to swap the thing a little bit, left, right click. So one side is to drain out all the power, and after that the right hand button is to actually continue shooting. So you don't need to keep clicking. It's a bit clunky on that one. So it is more like a seesaw action if you want. If you don't want to kind of like, you know, manage a fresh clip. There's one option there. Now, but of course, then, you know, first thing first, you need to understand, is it really an option for you to do that? Is it a good option? So looking at the, you know, basic power here, the damage, looking at the attack speed and so on, you can sort of understand that the DPS is about 5.5k. That is incorporating the 25% brutal strike. The power itself gives you brutal strike. So, the power itself will give you a brutal strike chance of 25%. How you work it out is that you have to have a target in mind. So for my Nick Fury, my end game target for crit chance is 50%, for brutal is 30%. Crit damage rating is about, I think it's about 300%, but I'm doing a little bit like conservatively. And my brutal damage rating is about 550. But again, it's just mathematical modeling. So what you need to do is that you need to run through this number through this formula here. Meaning that you assuming half the chance you don't crit, and half the chance when you keep crit, it gives you that much. And after that, when it brutal within the 50% window, then you have this brutal chance. So that is your baseline. And after that, what you do is that you add another 25% brutal strike to it, and after that you worked out, you know, the all in all, the amount of increase in performance, about 14%. So I can factor that 14% into the formula itself to give me a realistic kind of like indication of what this one would turn out like with a certain target in mind. So that's one. Another thing is that open fire is the one that's range, it's not area. Now, very interestingly, open fire DPS is rather low. So the first thing I spotted is that would the covering fire, which is an area power channel, be a better option when it comes to the end game. Now, just jump a little bit with gear. Maybe I'll just give you an indication. When I put on gear, actually the whole thing changes a little bit, and that's where things become quite interesting. With the gear, then I realized that because my attack speed increased a little bit, and my covering fire, which is a channel power, which is twice per second, which is, I think, you know, certain number twice per second, it would not scale up by attack speed. So in a sense, then the DPS becomes stagnant while the other one took over. So that is something to understand. Although take out the gear game design perspective, it tells you a story, but you have to put in some gear to kind of understand what happened. So it's like, you know, what if kind of thing. Now, so my thought about it is that I think the basic to non-basic power is roughly, let me see, so it's roughly 45% of the potential. So it's about right, because it usually is about 1/3 off if you use basic power. That's the whole reason why you don't use basic power. And with the gear, it's even more glaring. It's like, let me see, this one divided by that one is about, yeah, it's even lower. So it's about 40% kind of like down in performance. But that's something that is expected. But you could say, well, 100% loading time, how are you going to model it? You could in some sense, but remember, when you model the 100% on that, meaning that you have cycle 1, which is using open fire, cycle 2, which is triple tap, then you are losing one very valuable slot just for the recovery. And that could have been another layer that gives you a DPS. So all in all, it's just not worth it. So that's number one. Looking at design perspective, I think open fire is a little bit too low. I think this one, or this one's too high, whichever it is. But I think this one need to pump a little bit from a game design perspective. But I think I'll do another video on what my thought is. But all these numbers tell a story, and I hope you can appreciate the story. And of course, this one is not very efficient in dealing damage compared to the other one, looking at the ammo that's being used. All right, so now that's number one. We still got quite a fair bit to cover. I hope you guys deal with me. I think for those who are interested in number, this video could be interesting, but I just would like to just make one for the nerds. That's all. There are a couple of layers here. So what are layers that you have now? You have something called fresh clip that will refresh the non-signature power kind of thing. The reality is that, so a lot of power have a charges to it, like this one, fire in a hole, 2 charges, vulnerability. Now, traditional wisdom will tell you that, well, anything with vulnerability is not really good. But, I'll show you a number later on. Actually, it's not that bad here. Then you could things like the target down, that it's only 1 charges with the execute to it, meaning that the lower the health of the target, the better it performs. Then you have something called molecular destabilization grenade that weaken. Now, weaken traditionally is not really that great, and you will see that it is actually not really that great. So, by the number itself, but it's good to understand by how much it's off. Now, of course, anything in the middle will give you better kind of like a performance, and I factored that into my spreadsheet as well. What other things that need charges? There's something called end it. End it is another execute function, but it will teleport the Neck Fury right at the back of the target to stealth and then kind of like close target shoot. Again, I'll show you with the risk that come into this one, and I think this power is also very, very high. You'll see later. But what I think just a little bit of like digression here is that if I were Gazillion, I would have ended such a way that when I use end it, I'll gain back a charge in my dash, because every time when I end it, I end up having to come back out again anyway, because as Neck Fury, I'm a range, I don't really get, I'm kind of fragile, I'm not even a defense hero, so I'm not a defense hero, every time I end it, I will have to disengage back. Now there are multiple ways of disengage. I hope there was a power to disengage, but there was none. The only way to just end it, kind of thing. All right, so that is one. Coffee, can't leave it cold. So there are a couple of like charges to it. So that's one that I'm going to look into here. And there are also a couple of power that are. Maybe I start with those that with charges first, because I think that's rather interesting. So fire in the hole, if you recall, those are vulnerability debuff for 8 seconds. There are 2 charges. Now you could do it within a 15-second window or 10-second window. I think suffice to say, if for those who are playing Neck Fury and understand how this fresh clip works, it's very clumsy. So what it does is that if you refresh the clips right now, so for example, I shoot a fail, right? And if I refresh the clips right now, here, if I refresh it right now, it's 15-second cooldown. It's a very long cooldown. And also the thing is that I'm missing out on the cooldown reduction of 5 seconds. I'm also missing out on the base damage of 20%, which is equal to 800 damage rating. So all in all, I have to, regardless of what, wait until it is like a quarter down. When it's red, then it is a 10-second cooldown. Then I'll gain something that get a buff as well, and so on. Now, if you play Neck Fury in reality, this one won't happen. Like how you imagine, because there will be time when you're running around. There will be time that you have to avoid boss attack. You have to avoid things like the cosmic kind of like whatever on the ground they've been running around. You have to avoid things like some like lightning around you. So in reality, you probably have to kite a little bit, and when you kite little bit, you lose time. What it really means is that you lose time in spending ammo, and that's one of the main grief about this whole entire design, is that they do not take into consideration whereby you don't play Neck Fury standing still, because after the biggest update ever, you don't have limited charges. If there were unlimited charges, I'm fine with it, because you could run around quite a fair bit, but you can't. So you end up times when you have to walk. And when you're walking, you are not shooting. And when you're not shooting, you're not spending ammo. And if you're not spending ammo, you will not hit the red zone so as to capitalize on this cooldown. It will either means that because of you are trying to catch up on the time, and so as not to spoil the next cycle, because the next cycle you could actually maybe accomplish the 10-second window. So all in all, what it means that you could either refresh your clips too early and have to take the penalty, which is everything become a 20-second cooldown, 15-second cooldown, or you have to deliberately wait out your fresh clip so as to spend the ammo extra few seconds. Again, it will not be a 10-second, even though we refresh in 10 seconds. So from a mathematical modeling perspective, I take the more conservative approach, meaning that I could more or less on average, either I could refresh it on time or I have to spend ammo and waste some time on it. All in all, on average, I think I can do 15 seconds. And so I can do charges, and I sort of like I can reapply every 7.5 seconds in that sense. So that will give me a kind of like layer to it. So you can take a look at this this layer versus target down. So target down is the one that has execute. Usually I do it at the 50% kind of boss health, because when you start the engagement, the health of the boss is high, so your damage of target down is low. Then later on, towards the end, which the boss is at 90% dead, and then you are more buffed. So all in all, I'm just working on average scenario, 50% both health and buff accordingly. And you can see that target down can't really beat the fire in the hole. So even though this power with a vulnerability debuff, don't just discount or discard any power that has a vulnerability debuff and rely on your team up that could be just elsewhere like other kind to apply the vulnerability debuff for you. Doesn't work that way. So so it's an interesting information, because at the end of the day, I could actually do without it. Another thing to look into is the molecular destabilization granite that give you a weaken, and as we have all expected, weaken actually doesn't work out fine, because it's just like just low. Fire and forget is also kind of low. So there are a couple of things that that you could actually take out and not to pay attention too much on it. And just take a look at Andy as well, because Andy is the one that also execute but stealth behind the target, become a very much melee range, and you can see immediately is a huge kind of DPS thing here. But compared to Fire in a Hole, though, I mean it is not that much of a difference in a sense. So this is probably one of the best power you have, but whether you use it or not in your build, that is another question. We'll talk a little bit about it later. Now, with that said, there are actual power in Nick Fury's toolkit that do not require a fresh clip to refresh the cooldown. Things like, for example, the drone strike that give you twice per second for 2 seconds only. So there's a cooldown 8 seconds, 2 seconds only, but for whatever twice per second. There's something called danger close. Now, danger close is kind of like quite an interesting concept, because you can't. It basically it doesn't do where the pointer is. So, for example, you could say I'm pointing like right now I'm within range, right? So I could say maybe I just do a danger close here, but it's not. It's just here, right? So now then you have to understand that this one will go only until here. So you have to so-called get a little bit closer to do a danger close so as to hit it, right? So you have to kind of like a little bit adjustment to it, and that's one power danger close. Another one is called the Lola Unknown. Also apply vulnerability, but it's only for the summon for 6 seconds out of 12 seconds, and so on. Now, and also there's a signature as well that does the grenade sniper fire. But the good thing about signature, of course, it buff the the never say die, which is buff the damage bonus and so on. 10% though, it's not really humongous, but it's still there, and so on. Now, how do you compare all these things then? You can see a drone strike, plug the number in, last for 2 seconds, you have to reply at 8 second thing. It's about 1,258. So it is not as good as, say, the Fire in the Hole and the target down, but it's definitely beat the molecular destabilization grenade and Fire and Forget. Lola Unknown is pathetic, so although it buffed the summon, but I'll talk a little bit about summon in just a bit, because I think summon in Nick Fury is kind of disappointment, a big disappointment. Because in order to direct the summon to a particular target like Dr. Doom, you could do that, right? but they lock it behind one of the with the charges, and it's quite a long kind of like cooldown. You have to use target down, and it just not really working it the way that it contradicts the whole entire philosophy of trade design that you will see later on, because in order to have two charges of target down, you need to sacrifice one of the summons. So the whole idea of having summon is that so that you can do target down to direct all the summon into the target, but it doesn't work that way. So that is one thing at least we all know. Danger close, actually, I haven't thought about it yet, right? Danger close is actually really nice. It's actually comparatively to fire in the hole as well, and it's a cooldown power. Not constrained by how you spend your ammo, how you reload your ammo, so that is really cool. Eyes everywhere is a very disappointing kind of like a power. I personally, if I were to design this Nick Fury, either this one become higher, this one become like 20-second or whatnot, or just overall bump it up, because this eyes everywhere, if you kind of take a look at this one, has a radius as well. You have got to, well, you can't really see it, right? I don't know why, man. This game is so bugged. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you say you're at this range, so you're hitting it. Then you say, well, let me do eyes everywhere, but well, guess what? It doesn't hit. Well, there's only one thing that hit there. I don't know what it was. Only one power, which is the sniper fire. I think good night will miss. So you have to be quite close to have the good night to hit this one as well. So with the kind of like risk and return, I would think that the good night will hit much higher than the sniper thing here. So that is yet another missed opportunity in this whole thing. After the whole reason why you run through this number is that you could actually make an informed decision about how crap this one is. But then of course, in the end, they have something called the talent trait and whatnot to help you, beef this up, this one up a little bit. All right. So now, if you take a look at the first tier, kind of like a decision here now. For Nick Fury, he has something called Dum Dum Dugan. For some of you who has played this game for a while, Dum Dum Dugan is one of the character in the game. I believe in comic book as well. So now he does a physical damage of 15066. So first thing first, you may want to understand, like, what is this? It doesn't have any tag to it. It doesn't say that it is a summon, or does it do range? Like, for example, if I gear for range power, does it beef my, beefed up my damage output of Dum Dum Dugan? If I do this, like if I use the summon power, kind of like attribute, will I buff this power? Well, there are many ways to do it. Let me just take away something first, so as to demonstrate how this works. So now, if you take a look at this power, it's just remember number 15066. 15066. So for example, you say that, what if I do an Iron Man, which of course I don't recommend. This one has a range power. Now, Dum Dum Dugan, I presume, will use a gun that has like a range to it, right? It's not melee. So if I add a 2%, so this one is 15066, then what will happen? It's still 15066. So immediately, it does not affect by range power. So okay, that is not cool, but that's fine. But how about summon power? So you can actually pick one of the summon here. So it's a 10% summon power applied to it. Then after that, you say, oh, okay, that's increased. So with that said, then you understand that what power give you kind of like what. Kind of like, which power will give you the, which tab will help this one. Because toolkit is very, very minimalistic. I mean, this game just doesn't facilitate the whole entire understanding of the game mechanic in a sense. And that's one of the reason why I find that a little bit of lacking in this one. I don't know console, how it works. This is only PC. Another thing is that it doesn't tell you the attack speed of Dum Dum Dugan. So what I do is that I summon Dum Dum Dugan, which take a long while to come back in, and I time this one over a long period of time to realize that it hits about 10 times for 12 seconds. Not taking into consideration of the animation as well. So with that said, I say, okay, fine. So that I know, and it works for all the things as well. CQC, medic, and the heavy weapon specialist. All of them, you have to model it yourself and do a manual stopwatch timing. That's what I did, and I came up with what the DPS of 5 Dum Dum Dugan and fire team and the medic, and as well as heavy kind of like things as well. So that's what I've done. Then after that, I have also looked into the trade-off. So now to model that is a little bit tricky, but what it does is that you would actually, some of them will give you like target down and end it. We have a 50% damage kind of thing. But then I realized that, well, you can't really align, because one of the Born Leader, which is the main buff to a lot of your power, including your summon ally, it's kind of interesting. Sorry, I gotta pause a little bit here, because they always say that whatever buff the hero will go into the summon. So I'm just thinking, if that's the case, would the summon pet we're getting 65% instead of 25%, because the hero get buffed by 40%. But anyway, so they have something called Born Leader. You could actually use this one to give your NZ and target down a 50% damage. The thing is that to align this is very hard. If you do it really well, it means that you only stand there, do nothing, meaning you're in raid. I totally agree that it should work, because within that, your fresh clip can do it within a 10-second kind of like a window, and this one aligns just nicely. Every now and then you get a buff to it, but in reality, I found that it's not really that aligned, and I just take a more conservative approach to look into what if I can do every 20-second cooldown. What if I misalign and get a 30-second cooldown? I gain this much. Versus if I choose 5 Dum Dum Dugan, then I get this one. So I guess the decision could be rather simple, that, well, Dum Dum Dugan probably wins in that battle. So I went in the next thing about, what about eyes in the sky? Because for example, my drone here, I could do a drone, which is like, this is a drone, right? Which is hit with some fire thingy, or I can actually do like this one, eye in the sky, which is calling the falcon. So this one, so it become like a, I think, well, it looks really tiny, the damage. But anyway, so the so what I've done is that I compare, if I use eye in the sky versus the drone strike, what is the DPS I get extra out from it? Versus if I use a CQC, what is my DPS? Then again, CQC wins. So again, then I should not use a drone. So that become a very informed decision. The difference is tremendous. Then after that, okay, next one is a little bit hard, because there is something called the flyover, which is you can actually have the fire and forget, which is the one that is very forgettable. Make it a bit more awesome, become like a war machine thingy. So this thing become like the war machine will fly out and then bomb, and then after that, we actually continuously deal damage to it. So I've worked out the number without going too much of detail. I found that actually making war is actually pretty good as a power itself. Versus the medic or whatnot. Now, of course, you could also argue that in order to use this one, you have got to have the one in your hotbar. So I'm looking at difference here. If I'm already using the fire and forget, say, if I augment it, I actually gain another pretty huge kind of difference to it versus fire team. So it's kind of like, at least I get an informed decision. And I also look into the other two, which is the I could actually have the it always does a brutal and another charge and so on and so forth. So I could do something like that, and in the end I can work out the differences, and it's still not quite beating it. It's beating the medic, provided that I use both of this power, but it's not beating my making war, which in a sense then I say, okay, fine, that is an informed decision. And last but not least, there's also like a fire team kind of thing here, but the other two is really, you can compare the fire team, which is the 3k kind of DPS, by not having anything on your hotbar. So remember, your hotbar is always like a real estate. Because the moment you use one layer, the layer is used. But when it comes to talent like that is actually free in the sense that it doesn't require hotbar and you get extra layer of power that is even higher than the one on my hotbar. How does it work out? I don't know. But summoner have their own disadvantage as well. I'll talk a little bit about it later. And after that, you can also work out the some of these like shock and awe, for example, will augment your danger close. Danger close is the one. Remember, there's one that you have to dangerously close. This is one dot and then strike in. I hate the animation; it's just too long. Or you can use a shock and awe. Well, okay, hang on 1 second. You can use shock and awe, and after that you'll see. Well, actually, hang on 1 second. I think I have to use this one first, and after that, but it's supposed to give me. Yeah, 3 of them. So it's supposed to give you 3 of them. So yeah, and I can do, yeah. So it's one extra one when you use the power. So you can do a lot of modeling here and there and work out what's the build. But at the end of the day, I mean, all these are just very theoretical because you have to find a build that kind of fun, and I'm going to share that with you in time to come. But at least with all this number, and when you put on a gear, things changes a little bit here and there. It gives you a more accurate kind of like a thing that you could decide on what to do. Like for example, open fire is definitely something that I would want to invest in. Like for example, this is the one layer that I want. This one is, well, yeah, look, I mean, it's nice one here. Target down, whatnot. I mean, these are all forgettable. And after that, I could say, well, maybe my and it maybe danger close is nice as well, for example. Then you may say, well, do I really want the eyes everywhere, or do I actually want to use it as a buff? Because then the signature is not that fantastic in that sense. So it's quite a fair bit of like thinking behind of all these things. Like, oh, this one is nice, for example. Oh, this one is nice. So I know. Let me just give you an idea, right? How much I played. Sorry. Is close. So I have spent about 9 hours playing Nick Fury. Now, 1 hour I level to 60. Another hour I gear up to do an endgame content past the Cosmic Gate. So between that 1 to 2 hours, I spent about 7 hours, 6 or 7 hours just to study the numbers. But yeah, I mean, that is my passion. I enjoy doing that, and I hope you get some insight of what's behind the scene. If all this just like mumbo jumbo to you, and if you manage to get this far, kind of thing, I congratulate you, your patience and so on. I hope you have an understanding of how I do things, and have some confidence that when I do guide, I kind of sort of like know a little bit what's happening and so on. I'm always keen to share my knowledge with all of you. There's knowledge are supposed to be shared. Yeah, I mean, if you find this video useful, just take a look at the link in the description below. There are more guides for you to watch, and I think that is a long enough video for you all for one day. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.